Welcome to the most forward-thinking, inspirational podcast in this reality. The show designed to challenge everything we've been taught. If you've ever felt there had to be more to life, more to existence, then you're listening to the right podcast. Time to open your mind and dive in. This is the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast.
And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Today is episode 362, I believe. 362. If I was doing one episode a day for a year, I'd almost have it all done. But we've been running for like 5 years, 6 years, 7, 6. Jeez, I wish I remembered. I remember for a long time. I remembered when the anniversary was, but I don't now. Life just gets in the way, and you stop jotting down foolishness. Is it foolishness? Is it milestones? Is it something that keeps your mind focused on something else? Probably all of the above. I want to talk about waking up today. I laugh at how quickly the woke mob took over. Do you guys remember when you started to see things and you started to wake up? How quickly waking up got turned into woke? And it just blew me away because that took away something so beautiful of like waking up and seeing past things. And people are like, oh, you're woke. And then woke went from one thing to another. And now woke is associated with liberalism. And now it's go woke, go broke. And isn't it funny to say, I'm waking up? Oh, so you're woke? Right? You see how they've bastardized that shit? Like, it's just, you can't even have an open conversation without somebody attempting to mock or ridicule you for waking up, for seeing past the illusion, which is genius when you think about it from a marketing standpoint. Those who marketed our ignorance, which they did because they were the easiest to control when we're docile, stupid, and chasing fucking money. Right? We weren't educated in school. We were indoctrinated since day one. On top of that, our parents and grandparents were also indoctrinated. So from everywhere, we're receiving the lie. We're being bombarded with bullshit. And that's fascinating to me. So what happens when you wake up? There's a clip that I came across that I absolutely adore. It's Alan Watts talking about it. What happens to people when they start seeing things for essentially what it is and how it works on the mind and the psyche. And ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen this clip, I'll play it for you right now. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about it afterwards.
Spiritual awakening. They find that crowds, gatherings of people, what we would ordinarily think of as perfectly normal social situations, become extraordinarily difficult to navigate. And I don't mean difficult in the sense of social anxiety or shyness, though it might appear that way from the outside. I mean something far more subtle and far more profound. When you wake up, when you see through the game that most people are playing, when you recognize that the emperor has no clothes, you begin to experience crowds in an entirely different way. It's rather like being the only sober person at a party where everyone else is intoxicated. You can see what's happening with a clarity that's almost painful, while everyone around you is completely absorbed in the drama, completely identified with the performance. Let me describe what this actually feels like, because it's quite remarkable. When a spiritually awake person enters a crowd, the first thing they notice is the noise. And I don't mean just the physical noise, though that's certainly part of it. I mean the psychological noise, the energetic noise, the noise of 1,000 different egos, all clamoring for attention, all trying to assert themselves, all desperately attempting to be seen, to be heard, to matter. It's like walking into a room full of radios, each tuned to a different station, all playing at maximum volume, and the awake person can hear all of it simultaneously. They can feel the anxiety radiating from one corner, the anger pulsing from another, the desperate need for validation coming from someone nearby, the performance of superiority from someone else. It's overwhelming in a way that's very difficult to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. You see, most people are so identified with their own internal noise that they don't notice the noise of others. They're so busy with their own thoughts, their own concerns, their own little drama, that they're essentially insulated from the collective cacophony. But the person who has awakened has, in a sense, dropped their own noise, or at least learned not to identify with it, and so they become extraordinarily sensitive to the noise of others. It's rather like what happens when you stop talking yourself. Suddenly, you can hear what everyone else is saying. And when you're in a crowd, what you hear is not particularly pleasant. You hear fear masquerading as confidence. You hear emptiness pretending to be fullness. You hear the desperate hunger for meaning, for connection, for something real, all covered over with layers upon layers of social performance. Now, let me be clear about something. The awakened person doesn't judge this. They don't look down on people in crowds and think themselves superior. That would be just another form of ego, another form of separation. What they feel is more like compassion mixed with a kind of existential exhaustion. They can see the suffering so clearly, can see how everyone is trapped in their own little prison of self-concern. And there's a deep wish that people could see what they're doing to themselves. But there's also the recognition that you can't force anyone to wake up, can't rescue anyone from their own illusions. Another thing that happens in crowds is what I might call energetic invasion. You see, most people have very poor energetic boundaries. They're constantly leaking energy and simultaneously trying to take energy from others. This is what most social interaction actually is, though people don't realize it. It's an unconscious exchange, or more accurately, a battle for energy. People try to make themselves feel more substantial, more real, more alive, by drawing attention, by dominating conversations, by making others laugh, by impressing others with their accomplishments. The awakened person can feel all of this happening, can sense the constant pull and push of energy, the grasping and the defending, the inflating and the deflating. And because they're not playing this game anymore, because they're not trying to get energy from others, they often become a target. People unconsciously sense that here is someone who has energy to spare, someone who isn't defending themselves in the usual way, and they gravitate toward them, trying to draw from that well. This is exhausting. Imagine being a source of water in a desert. Everyone who's thirsty will come to you, will want something from you, and you cannot serve everyone without depleting yourself. And so the awakened person often needs to withdraw, needs to protect their energy, not out of selfishness, but out of simple self-preservation. There's also the matter of authenticity, or rather, the lack of it. In crowds, people are almost never authentic. They're playing roles, wearing masks, performing versions of themselves that they think will be acceptable, impressive, worthy of love or respect. And this performance is so automatic, so habitual, that most people don't even know they're doing it. But the awakened person can see it clearly, can see the gap between what people are presenting and what they actually are. And this creates a very strange situation, because the awakened person, having dropped most of their own masks, having learned to simply be what they are, without pretense, now stands out. They seem unusual, perhaps too direct, perhaps too quiet, perhaps too unwilling to engage in the usual social games. And this makes others uncomfortable. People sense that this person is not playing by the rules, is not participating in the collective performance. And this is threatening to them, because it reminds them unconsciously of their own inauthenticity. So the awakened person often finds themselves isolated within the crowd, present but not truly participating, observing but not deeply engaging. They become like a mirror, and people don't particularly enjoy looking into mirrors that reflect their true face, rather than the image they've constructed. There's another aspect to this that's worth exploring. In crowds, there's a kind of collective consciousness, a group mind that forms. People start to think and feel in unison, influenced by the mood of the group, the expectations of the gathering, the unspoken rules of the situation. This is why crowds can become mobs so easily. The individual consciousness gets submerged in the collective, and people do things in groups that they would never do alone. But the awakened person doesn't merge with the collective in this way. They maintain their individual awareness even within the group. They can observe the formation of the group mind without being absorbed by it. And this, again, creates a sense of separation, of being alone even in the midst of many people. They're like someone watching a film while everyone else is inside the film, completely identified with the story. You know, there's a very peculiar...
This is one of those things. This is one of those huge, moments where to the awakened soul, you ask yourself, was I always designed to wake up? And the answer is yes. It's part of your programming. And the funny thing is, once you get past the programming of the third dimension, i.e. education, indoctrination, schooling, government, all that sort of stuff, you realize that programming runs a layer deeper. That you're in this because you programmed yourself into it. So what happens when you become aware? What happens when you start waking up? A lot. And what happens after you've woken up a little bit? What happens down the line when you start seeing things a little bit more clearly? Well, you start connecting the dots, and like they were talking about, they talked about a lot of things in there, but that whole thread, that whole message is just so profound because it certainly speaks to my experience. And why, when I was younger, was I involved in drugs and alcohol and all that sort of stuff? Why did I want to do that? What was I escaping from? Well, I believe I was escaping from the truth. I believe I was escaping from what I understand or what I understood to be the truth. And it's that sort of thing that really, really threw me off because, again, my whole life, I firmly believed that I was surrounded by millions yet completely alone. I never fit in anywhere. I never fit in with my family. I never felt like I was part of anything. I always felt like people were using me or that I just simply didn't understand, or that it never felt right for me to be a part of anything. And so the drugs helped with that because they took that away. And they gave that sense of, I don't even want to say sense of connection, but maybe it was. I think they just took away the sense of loneliness. I think when you're on the drugs and when you're on drinking, I'm on the booze. When you're on the drugs and when you're drinking, the loneliness goes away for a little while. Well, it comes back tenfold, but it goes away for a little. It allows you to enter into the realm where everybody else is. When you're drinking and you're on the drugs, you get to be a part of something. And that's addictive. Especially for somebody and for a mentality where you're perpetually alone. Now, what's really cool too is in life you do come across some people that take that away. You come across some people that make you feel like you're part of something. And that shit's just as fucking scary as being alone. Because all of a sudden you're actually feeling something real and it doesn't make any goddamn sense. And then you have to ask yourself, what is real? Is this real? Is being alone real? Is the sensation real? Am I aware that I am a unit inside a video game and that I am different from everything around me? And that everything around me is also not necessarily around me in the way I think it is. Alan Watts also said a man who only thinks only has his thoughts to think about. That often interfered with me because as a philosopher-style mindset, I often think. But the truth of the matter is you have to have experiences. You can't learn to swim by studying the water. You have to get into it. And that's something that we often forget too, right? Because the idea of getting into the water or getting into society or getting into a group of people still feels empty. Empty and alone. Still feels like you're an outsider looking in. And I don't mean an outsider as in a social outsider. I mean physically. How am I supposed to relate to these people? I can have these conversations, but I'm not interested. I don't care. I'm not part of this. And it's not something that we want. It's just something that we experience. I'm saying all this because when you find yourself in a position where you're consuming drugs, drinking, alcohol, you're doing it to escape. And a lot of the time you're doing it to escape yourself. I know full well. I know a lot of people that are in this position too, but I've experienced it myself even recently. You know, you start down a path and one thing leads to another, and then total chaos ensues. Or total chaos doesn't ensue, and you just casually stay on that path, not necessarily living up to your potential, your dream, your desire, your aspirations. What are we supposed to do then? That's almost the worst, because now you're stuck in monotony. Now you don't even realize that there's a problem. There's something to be said about going balls to the wall with alcohol, because it wakes you up and you're like, I can't do this anymore. But again, alcohol is one of those things where it's like, it's just so casual. You're like, well, I'm going to drink tonight. I'm going to have 2 or 3 glasses a night or a week or this or that. And you stay in this area, this gray zone of not reaching out to your full potential, yet still being stuck and frustrated by the third dimension. And this, I'm specifically speaking to those who are waking up. How do you find your passion? How do you find and create it? Well, you have to get into the water. And some people get into the water. Some people dive right on in. Some people get in with floaties. Right? Alcohol is floaties. Drugs are floaties. You're in the water. You're sort of trying. You're sort of figuring it out. You're sort of not part of it. These people are swimming laps and you're just staying afloat. But it's hard because you don't relate to people. And often you don't want to relate to people. So waking up isn't some sort of wonderful, mystical thing. It's a rite of passage, I suppose. It's a journey. It's a path. It's a thing. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating as all hell because it doesn't seem to matter which way you look. There are options here. There are options there. There's a choice here. There's a choice there. There are so many things that we can do. And when we think ourselves to death, or when we don't feel a part of anything, or when we are at war with ourselves while trying to connect with others, we slow ourselves down. And every single story we tell ourselves about who we think we are because we're so smart and we're so awake and we're so aware is also bullshit. But we don't allow ourselves to see that it's bullshit because we still believe that we've outthought ourselves from the third dimension or from the other people. And again, like Alan Watts said in that clip, we're not looking down on anyone, but we just don't relate. And when you find somebody who is awake, it's like you almost get angry, or you get confused, or you get standoffish because, like, is it possible? Is this person real? Is this a thing? What am I supposed to do with this? And then you back off, and then you think about all of your previous traumas and all of your previous relationships and all of your previous experiences. And you think to yourself, I'm going to apply this to them, or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So even when you stand there in your utmost enlightened position, there are still massive trials and tribulations. So we say to ourselves, where's the reprieve? What's the point of waking up? How come I can't just get plugged back into the system? Joey Pants from The Matrix. I know this steak isn't real, but it tastes so very juicy. When you plug me back in, could you give me a full head of hair and maybe a couple of bucks? Wouldn't that be nice to just fall back asleep but be a millionaire? Yeah, sure, it sounds great on paper. But now you're dead asleep in a game that doesn't make any sense. Waking up in a game that doesn't make any sense is annoying as well. And where does it go? Where does it lead to? What's next? You get lost in that too. There isn't a clear-cut way through any of this. I think the best piece of advice I could possibly give is understand that you're in the game. Understand that the players in the game are players in the game. And understand that the game exists because you made it exist. Something to do with, this was a choice before I got here to come here, to learn lessons. Some lessons are great. Some lessons are absolutely terrible. But lessons are learned. Navigation is learned and comprehended, and you can't navigate or learn or have ups and downs in a perfect world. So the world itself has to be slightly askew. And the people in here need to be the people in here. The NPCs need to be the NPCs. Every single person's life overlaps in such an intricate way. This game is ultra meticulous. It also doesn't give you what you want. It's not a slot machine. It gives you where you are. And this is one of those things too, where if you're down and out and if you're feeling bummed out and you want to try this out, go to the gym. Change your focus. Turn off the Kardashians. I'm not assuming any of you watch the Kardashians, but I'm just saying, turn off the TV. Start writing the book. Watch how quickly the universe does reward you when you get out of your funk, when you choose to step into your purpose, or when you choose to just sort of step into what you think is next as opposed to delaying it. And I'm not saying don't delay it, because again, why would the world put jet skis here if we weren't meant to ride jet skis and have contrast? For every powerful thing that you're doing, it's nice to relax. But if you get stuck in a rut, you can get stuck in a forward momentum rut. You can get stuck in an enlightenment rut. You can get stuck in a I don't have a job rut. You can get stuck in a I'm working too hard for everybody rut. What you do with your energy is what comes back to you. And sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you have to say yes. Sometimes you have to put on a crazy pair of pants and go dance in the middle of a crowd because it doesn't make any goddamn sense and you need an absolute pattern interrupt. Waking up, ladies and gentlemen, is not easy. It's not righteous. It's not anything. If anything else, it's almost like a curse because you instantly become an outsider. And the thing is, every single person that is waking up now always felt like an outsider then. So if you're the black sheep, if you're the one thing that's not quite the way it should be, understand that this was your mission. Understand that you can lean into it. And when you embrace the chaos and when you embrace the pain and the suffering and all that sort of stuff and the loneliness, and you stop with the drugs and you stop hiding, it gets even weirder for a little bit. But then clarity comes in and fun comes back and energy changes and energy shifts and you become more in control of everything that you ever thought you were losing control of. When you allow yourself the grace to just simply be in a world that makes no fucking sense to anyone, you end up having a lot more fun. And fun brings challenges and people and new things, which can bring heartbreak, which is sad, which is the ups and downs, the yin and yang of life. And it's truly beautiful if you allow it to be beautiful. I don't know what else to tell you, ladies and gentlemen. This world is not at all anything what we think it is. And then when we figure out what it is, it's also not that either. Which is like, hey, okay, fuck it. Let's just have a little bit of fun. Let's get out there and let's just do it. Let's just live life. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to reach out to us, please do. Info at the Mental Mastery Alliance. Or talk to me directly, Adam at the Mental Mastery Alliance. You can even send us a text, 647-338-1265. Have your voice heard on the show. In the infamous words of Red Green, if the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mental Mastery Alliance podcast. Stay connected with us directly through the mentalmasteryalliance.com. You can also join the discussion on Instagram at instagram.com/the Mental Mastery Alliance. Let the team know you're listening by using the hashtag TMMA or tagging us at the Mental Mastery Alliance. To have your voice heard on the show, leave a voicemail or send a text to 647-338-1265. Long distance charges may apply. If you love us, leave us a review. If you hate us, you spend your time in weird ways, but also leave a review. Every review on iTunes tickles the algorithm, helping us grow. Until next time, unity over division. This concludes the most surreal portion of your day.
You got it, Pontiac.